Well, good morning, everyone. We've been looking at chapter 42 of Genesis, and the big question in this part of the story is, have Jacob and the brothers changed over the past 20 years? We've already seen that Joseph has changed, but have they? And we saw that Jacob hasn't really changed, and really the brothers haven't changed either. But there's one more bit that I want to bring out of the fact that the brothers haven't changed. And it helps us to see Jesus in this story. Jesus, the main character of this story. Remember yesterday we went over the 6 tests that Joseph and God put upon the brothers to reveal their spiritual state. But I skipped test number 4 because it's in a category all on its own. Remember, when you get done with this, go read this text on your own, because even the best teaching, which this is not, but even the best teaching is no replacement for reading the Bible on our own. But you all probably know this part of this story. The brothers have arrived to buy grain. Joseph is the one who's going to sell it to them, but they don't recognize him. He recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. And remember, it has been 20 years after all. And the Egyptians at this time shaved their heads and their beards, and they also wore some kind of religious headdress. So it's understandable that the brothers wouldn't recognize him. But he recognizes them, and he accuses them of being spies, tests them, and won't let Simeon leave without Benjamin coming back to Egypt. And when they're talking amongst themselves about this, it reveals the spiritual state of their hearts. It comes out in verses 21 and 22. Then they said to one another, "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen, so now there comes a reckoning for his blood." So this is a test from God that answers the question, or reveals their answer to the question of how have they dealt with their guilt. We get a glimpse into their hearts here. And after more than 20 years, we see that they're still carrying around the guilt of betraying Joseph. They're haunted by Joseph's cries for mercy that they ignored while they sat around eating their lunch, as chapter 37 showed us. And Reuben's words show us that they have no concept of forgiveness for their sins, but believe that God, this is the same God who made the covenant promises to their father Jacob, their grandfather Isaac, and their great-grandfather Abraham. They think that that gracious God is sitting around waiting to take revenge on them. They're God's chosen people. They're the ones on whom God has placed his steadfast love, and they think that he's out to get them. Here we clearly see the sad state of their spiritual health. They haven't dealt with their guilt at all, but they've tried to bury it. God won't let them do that. I wanted to take this one by itself because this is a very important question. One of the most important questions you can ever ask yourself. How am I dealing with my guilt? Remember, we've at youth group been talking about worldviews and the Christian worldview. And this is one of those questions that every worldview has to answer. How am I dealing with my guilt? Some answer it by trying to bury the guilt, but that's like trying to throw a blanket over a dead body. You may not see it, but you're going to smell it eventually. This is probably what Joseph's brothers tried to do. Some other worldviews try to answer it by doing enough good works to outweigh it. But there's never enough that we can do to ease our own consciences inside. Only the Christian story can truly deal with guilt completely because it has been paid for by Jesus. Here's another illustration that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the first book in the Narnia series, helps us out with. In this part of the story, remember, Edmund had betrayed his brother and sisters, but Aslan's rescue party has gotten him back and brought him back to Aslan's camp. But the witch comes after him, and she accuses him of being a traitor. She accuses him of his evil, and she tells Aslan that she has a right to his life. And all of the other creatures, all the other talking animals, they want to defend Edmund. But listen to what Edmund does. But Edmund had got past thinking about himself after all he'd been through and after the talk he'd had that morning, a talk with Aslan. He just went on looking at Aslan. It didn't seem to matter what the witch said. And then later on, as she keeps accusing him, Edmund was on the other side of Aslan, looking all the time at Aslan's face. The only way to deal with guilt is to look at the face of Jesus Christ, so to speak. When our consciences accuse us, when the devil accuses us, when other people accuse us of our sin, even if it is true that we did it, it was true that Edmund was a traitor. If we fix our eyes on Jesus, who paid for those sins, only then will we really get past the guilt, and will it not haunt us like it haunted the brothers in this story. When the guilt does haunt you, don't listen to his accusations. Listen to Jesus, who says to us, like John said in 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. You guys think about that, and I'll see you tomorrow.